Hi, everybody, and welcome to a very special coworking. It's a podcast about what make a coworking very special. And this month, we're welcoming Edmust from the Space to Thrive. So it is a special coworking. We were talking about boats before because Ed is also living on a boat. So also not only, and is sometimes hosting his virtual coworking from the boat. Hi, Ed.
Hi Fanny, how are you doing? Hi everyone watching this live.
Thank you very much for being here. And so we were talking a lot about boat before, so that's how I got this idea. But today you're not on the boat, right?
No, not today. I'm in a normal bricks and mortar house today. Yeah.
Too sad. But
I know.
sometimes is it I was wondering before we go live, is it tricky because the internet connection might be less good or
Yeah, it can be. What is
mm,
interesting is that it's got a lot better over the last 10 years. So when
mhm.
I first lived on the boat, it was a 3D connection, something like this. And now, of course, with 5G, I actually get faster speeds on the boat than I do in the house. So yeah, I did a
Wow.
co-working session on the boat a couple of weeks ago, hosting
Mhm.
that for people, and yeah, it was lovely. And in the breaks, it was nice. I just took my laptop and pointed it out the window, and everyone could just see the
Yeah.
river and the ducks passing, and it was
So
really
nice. There
beautiful.
used to be a lot of links like that being shared
Mm,
during the lockdowns. And one of
yeah.
them was you could record. It's very slow watching, slow show, slow TV in a way.
Hmm.
You could record your window and whatever is happening through the window. And you could, on the website, you could access windows from all over the world and see a street in Istanbul or the countryside in Switzerland, those kind of things. And you could change the window and just watch and hear the sound and feel like you're traveling.
Nice. Yeah,
Mm,
I did it. I've done that a few times. Like when I've been moving along, I'll set up my iPad and
mhm.
kind of hang it in the doorway, and then
Yes.
and just kind of stream it. I've usually streamed it live onto like Facebook with friends and family, but
Mhm.
yeah, I like the idea of connecting and being able to share that with a wider audience. That would be really
Mhm.
interesting. Mm.
I'm mainly missing about Twitch. A lot of Twitch
Mm.
or streaming channels are about people just, studying or working or doing something while being recorded, but not actually talking to an audience or just doing stuff.
But that's interesting because I mean,
Mm,
kind of links into the co-working because a lot of
mm.
people will kind of say to me, like, so let me get this right. People just join a Zoom call and then they get on with their own work. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, I just, what? What? Really? And I'm
You
like,
don't
yeah.
talk?
And we don't talk. We take a 5 minute break every 25 minutes. And that's sometimes
Oh.
where we will do a little bit of movement. We might
Hmm.
do some meditation. Sometimes we go and make a cup of tea.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really nice. And the number of people that get just really curious just from that,
Yes.
and they're like,
Yeah.
"Ah, interesting." And so now the people that show up to these things regularly, they're like all over, they're all over the place. We're
Hmm.
not in we're not in one physical place. We're spread out in so many different places. So yeah, it
Yeah.
makes it makes a real difference, I think.
Yeah, and you mentioned I'm also doing the Pomodoro technique. So it's a technique
Mm,
of working 25 minutes and taking a 5 minute break. You can change it to maybe working 50 minutes and take 10 minutes break or doing again something different that fits you because
mhm,
the first thing I get when I talk about it is, oh, I couldn't do that. I couldn't,
mm.
stop after 25 minutes and take a small break. Is too much. I'm into my task and I need to finish it.
And that's interesting for me,
Mm,
because I'm very interested in how we function and how we work and how can we
hmm
work well and work with a sense of well-being.
hmm
And one of the things that has become very clear to me is, I think, for neurodiverse people, also for
Yeah.
people who experienced perhaps adverse childhood experiences, people with trauma as well,
hmm
the temptation to either procrastinate or to become so hyper focused that you realize you've not taken your eyes off the screen for like 5
That's me.
hours. Uh-huh,
And you
right?
get hungry and you need to go to the toilet and you're like,
Yeah.
I haven't moved for hours.
Exactly. And so
Mm,
what I'll often do when we're doing our co-working sessions is I invite, particularly for the first 25 minutes, I say to people, okay, so bring along your to-do list and choose something that you would like to focus on. See if you can break it down.
mm,
Choose one thing that you'd like to start in 25 minutes. And I say to everyone every time, let's use this first 25 minutes to work out what is possible today, given our energy, given
yeah.
our, where we are in the day, and just give people that time to kind of work through. And then when we get to the end of 25 minutes, I'm always like, okay, we've just got to let it go now. Whether you were like really focused or whether you were
Yes.
still checking your email, it's just like, okay, time to just
Mm-hmm.
let that time go and just
Yes.
give people a minute to think about what does that mean for the next like 3 Pomodoro sessions,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So like for example, if I'm finding that I'm super distracted, rather than getting frustrated and annoyed and being like,
Yes.
oh, the time's all going away, what am I doing? It's like an invitation to go, oh, that's really interesting. I'm really distracted today. Okay, so
Mm,
I've got a couple of choices. Maybe when we go for a break and Ed is doing like when I'm doing some kind of movement based thing or maybe a breathing technique, maybe I'll stay for
amazing.
that. Yeah, right. And then sometimes it's a bit like, um, actually, I've been really focused. I'm going to just get away from my screen. And it's just so interesting. The people that come back week after week,
Mm-hmm.
it's really notice. And they always say how much more they get done than they would have done if they were just on their
It's
own.
working with intention, observing
Hmm.
what's happening, and actually choosing what to focus on or not, and not just getting drag where you're
Right,
getting drag. Mm.
right. Yeah, it's so important just giving yourself that time to focus on the kind of work that you want to be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So
I love that movement stuff. Mm.
I'm wondering, how long have you been facilitating those kind of session? Were you always facilitating Pomodoro style, or has it changed?
Yeah, so I started running these sessions probably 18 months ago, something like this.
Ooh.
Yeah, and it was in response to a lot of the work I do as a coach and
Yes.
also as a group facilitator.
Mm-hmm.
I started to notice, particularly during the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
when there was this blurring of work and home.
Oh yeah.
um, there's always been this challenge with people kind of agree things that they're going to do in a coaching session or in a group work session and then struggle to get things done. But I noticed it got really really bad during the pandemic, and so I was kind of starting to think, how can I support people to make that progress.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I experienced when I was on a training program, and someone just offered a follow-up session of co-working online, and I thought, wow, this is great. But they only offered like the one session.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, so I just kind of started offering it, and before I knew it, we were offering this to like 100 people, and we were getting somewhere between like maybe 5 and 10 people turning up each
Mm-hmm.
time. And then over the course of the last 12 months or so, I've increased the frequency. So we generally do between 1 and 2 sessions per week.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, kind of getting a slowly growing following of people that come and
Mm-hmm.
join the sessions. They're
Slowly
really
but
beautiful.
surely.
Yeah, it really is about like showing up each week and just
Mm-hmm.
hosting the session, and over time, people get to know about it and come along and give it a try. And I find that if people give it a try, very quickly people will say, "This is amazing. How did I not know about this?" Or they'll
Hmm.
say, "This isn't for me at all." And if people are kind of
Ooh.
saying, "Oh, it's not for me," I'm like,
Yes.
"Oh, interesting." And some people say they want longer. They want to do
Mm-hmm.
50 minutes, to which I kind of will point them in direction of like maybe some other online co-working sessions and just say, why don't you give some of these other communities a try?
Yeah.
Um, like Cave Day and things like this. There are loads of options out there, but it's really nice to be able to focus with the group that I work with on that kind of real sense of well-being.
Yeah, so you're into that, and that's great that you're recommending other spaces, because as you
Mm,
were saying, it's people disqualify themselves.
yeah.
They come in, they check it out, and they say, "Oh, this is for me. This isn't for me." And
Yeah.
in the case it isn't for them, it's good for you actually to know other, to be a
Mm.
community of communities, and to know the other communities out there, and to be able to, lead them towards what might help them actually.
Yeah,
Mm,
because it's all about like we're all looking to meet a need, right? So
mm,
people come to a community like a
yeah.
co-working session or an online one because they want to.
Mhm,
Most people are saying to me, and this is also true for me, is want to work in the company of other people.
mhm,
I really want to work in a way that feels less pressured, and that also I can get to the end of 2 hours and feel like I've made some progress on something. So
yeah.
that's the kind of vibe I go for. I'm trying to find the middle way with people between those two things, and so that's great. And when people come to these sessions and find that, it's
Yeah.
really beautiful. And then also sometimes people are coming because they really want to focus on productivity and they're less interested in the well-being side of things. And if that's where people are
Hmm.
in their journey, cool. Like I can definitely recommend you some places that are very focused on
Mhm.
the productivity side.
But I'm thinking productivity and well-being, they're linked, right?
I see it. I see it.
Mm.
The research shows it. Some people, it doesn't resonate with them.
It's
They just
maybe more
don't.
the messaging, the approach. They want an
Yeah, right.
approach more on the productivity side, even if it includes the well-being.
Hmm.
And some people might enjoy the productivity, but don't want to feel that kind of pressure of the results, maybe. And so
Mm,
focusing more on the process and the well-being might help them better. But the goal
yeah.
is might be the same. It's the same mountain, different path.
Yeah, for sure, right?
Mm,
For
mm,
sure. And that's the nice thing about it being able to provide those different paths and see people come. And also, of course, the other thing that I think is interesting, and this happens a lot in the
mm.
facilitation work I do. I was running a training program at the weekend for facilitators, and it
Yes,
was really, really lovely getting a gift. I got a gift at the end and like some notebooks and
yes.
some jams and things from the group. It was super lovely. And it was making me think about how so often I will get emails months or years after running a program or
Hmm.
facilitating a space, and people are
Yeah.
like, "Oh, that like I've used this for a long time, but I remember you said this, and it didn't make any sense at the time, and today it makes sense. And
Yeah,
it's really
yeah,
nice to get those emails where you can kind of share that journey with someone.
yeah.
And so it's again like with the virtual co-working, I've had someone a very long time ago, they came to maybe the first couple, and they were like, "Yeah, I'm not into this at all.
Yeah.
This isn't for me."
Hmm.
And then they came back a few times in the spring this year for something very specific. They had a very particular
Hmm.
project, and they just were
Oh.
not making any progress on it. And they emailed me after and was like, "This was great. This is exactly what I needed this for. Thank you." I'm like, "Cool."
It's crazy how it makes its own way. It takes its own
Mm,
time,
yeah, yeah, we're not in control,
even
right?
years later.
Yeah, we're not in control. That's the nice thing. It's you just create
Yeah.
the space and see who shows up, and
Mm,
you know, and that's a real gift. Like being able to wake up in the morning and host spaces. I mean, this is the other part of it. For me, it meets a need I have, which is that I don't function very well on my own for long periods of time. I just don't. And
there are a
you
lot
know,
of people like that. Mm,
yeah, I find for me, I have to have some human contact each day that's not my
mm,
partner. Like my partner's great. I need to mix it up as well. And so one thing that I've noticed, again, facilitating for a long
hmm.
time or coaching is, some weeks there are just a couple of weeks where there's nothing in the diary in terms of coaching or
Hmm.
facilitation. And so this was a really good solution for me as well, which is like
Yes.
I know I can commit to like doing two of these sessions a week, and I know I'll always be, mixing with other people and
Yeah, yeah.
doing
Yeah,
my craft as well.
I love this because Yeah, I'm an introvert. I like to be on my own most of the time, but it
Hmm.
doesn't mean I don't like to be with others. It just means that I like to be with others less than some other people who like to be with them a lot. I have that friend who's going out almost every day, and one day she was telling me that she's not going out every day, and then she told me about her weekends, and she was doing 5 different activities. I'm like, I do one activity. It's one with you right now, and that's it, and that's all for me. But
Hmm.
so everybody's their own. But I like to go then to a co-working space or to an event like once a week, something like that, and to have that different vibe, that different energy, that's gonna
Mm.
mix with the rest and give you that little spark, maybe. Mm.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a really great co-working space in Manchester for the
Mm-hmm.
LGBT community, and it's funny. I'm more part of the WhatsApp chat than I am like in terms of attending the physical, like actual
Yeah.
get-togethers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and one of the things that was interesting that put me off co-working for a long time is
Mm.
early on in my freelancing, maybe like 8 years ago. I didn't know like how to describe what I did, and
I know that.
uh, I didn't want to
Mm.
go to these co-working sessions because I didn't want people to ask me what I do.
What do you do? I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. I was, and at that time, I was just not comfortable saying I wasn't sure, you know. And like today, it's a lot easier. I can kind of look at that and kind of go, oh, it doesn't really matter. It's always evolving. Actually, also
Hmm.
maybe talking to another human being might make it clearer what it is that
Yeah.
you do. And
Mm.
it's great to practice on another human being who is probably going through something similar,
They do. They
right?
do. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But that's the beginning, when I started my career about 8 years ago too, and forced
Mm.
myself to go to networking events because I would merge with the wars, but
Yeah.
then with time, with practice, you feel me there,
Mhm.
and you get used to it, and you meet the same people again and again, and when you talk with them, actually the fear fade away because they're like you. They have different issues, maybe, or they're on different. That's one thing I got from virtual co-working is that there were people there who were
Mm.
at a stage in their career which I still aim for. But then they
Mm.
were talking about all the different issues. I'm wondering if they do anything good. I'm like, but you're like God to me.
Right? Yeah.
But everybody have their ups and downs wherever they are.
And there's
Mm,
something interesting in that for me about, like, feeling safe. Like,
mm,
that's a big thing for me is, like, if I can go into a space and I can feel safe to be myself, all of those worries tend to, like, evaporate quite quickly.
yeah,
And so I think there's something that's a bit unspoken. Like, I think some people might say, "Oh, yeah, you just switch on Zoom and, like, people just show up and do their work,"
yeah.
and pay, like, maybe a few pounds to support the cause. Like, "Oh, that's really easy." I'm like,
Mm,
it's very simple, but there is something about creating an environment, particularly online,
yes.
where it is possible to feel safe, feel relaxed,
A
you
safe
know,
space, a real
safe
safe space.
space. And
Mm,
and I think, I would always say to people who are thinking about starting a co-working space, um, it's not just about having the physical space or the online link. It really is about how do you how do you kind of how do new people join? Like, what can
yes.
you do to make that process as easy as possible for people? Um, Without going too far and like taking away people's agency to
Yeah,
choose like who they might want to connect with, but how do you make that process of introduction and finding that this is my space also,
yeah.
how do you make that process as easy as possible?
Yeah, again, it's a balance. We were talking first about the balance between productivity and
Mm,
maybe too much with the stress of the hustle, of the result and
mm,
well-being. And here we talk about, again, control you might have over the community and how things happen, and the freedom you leave your
mm,
member to define whatever experience they actually want to live.
mm. Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting because it's often the spaces I don't want to go, but I get very picky, I think, as a facilitator, and
Yeah.
some with some of my health conditions, I get very picky about like how spaces are held. Um, yeah,
We
and
say,
it's
I don't know if you have that expression in English. In French, we say professional deformation or yeah,
interesting. I think
reflect.
in it, yeah, in English, I think people would say like psychological safety, maybe.
Mm. You
Yeah.
because you're in that profession, you see things others don't see anymore. I
Oh,
One of
sorry, I
my
see what you
first
mean.
job
Yeah.
was in the movie industry, and
Mm,
people tend to say that they don't watch movie for fun anymore. It's just the brains turn on and they're analyzing the movie, saying, "Oh, this, that. Do you see that light or that the acting? It was a bit.
huh.
I wouldn't have do it like that, or the director should have said something." Or and it's always on
Yeah,
and on and on, and you're not watching movies because you want to, even though you love it, and that's usually why you started working in movies. So,
for sure, right? Yeah, and it's the that kind of switching off the analytical part of our
hmm
mind and just being present. Like,
hmm
you know, I guess that might be, if you go and see a movie by your favorite director or your favorite actor,
mm
you know it's just going to be held really well, and the story's going to be told really well, and you can just relax and enjoy the film, right?
mm
And yeah, I guess there's something similar for just for those first few touch points when you go
mm.
into a co-working space is
And you
like,
noticed, this should be like this should be like that. I love what they did with this.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, and you just want it to, I guess, kind of be in a particular way. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. But yeah, like you say, it's very interesting just trying to get that balance. I think also online as well, when you're, you don't necessarily know who is there straight away.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to get that balance between, I mean, I've got a few people that come to pretty much every session, and so you
Ooh.
notice the energy shift, right, when someone new
Mm-hmm.
arrives,
Ooh,
and they've never
yeah.
been to a session before,
Mm-hmm.
and so you want to, you're kind of trying to hold kind of almost two spaces for a while, which is the acknowledgement of someone who has been coming regularly and you know gets something out of that space, and then you also have someone new who's just arrived, who is
Yeah.
we're still about to explore and find out what they're going to get from the space.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
that's interesting. The new versus the veteran, you could say, and
Mm.
how
Yeah,
who
yeah,
is where and what. I remember a talk with another manager who was talking about. So her space was for female entrepreneurs, not saying if a man shows up, she's telling him to not enter, not a welcome, of course, but the energy of the room is different when it's only woman or when it's only men, or
for sure.
versus new to returning versus all kind of different people actually.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, and I will also notice that there's a few kind of spaces I've been in. Well, and again, facilitating, right? I always say that the who you don't invite or who's not invited is kind
Mm.
of almost as important as who is invited,
Oh
because
yeah,
it really shapes the space,
yeah.
um, because of power dynamics and cultural norms and all of these kinds of things. And so it's
Mm.
almost like when we want to create an inclusive space, we have
Mm.
to almost exclude some people for the
I
benefit of those,
understand that.
for that journey to go on.
I used to co-organize a TEDx event, and I wouldn't call it like that, but I say we almost did positive sexism because we
Mhm.
wanted to have half of a speaker male and half of a speaker woman. If we wanted women, we had to say no to men and look for the woman because
Mhm.
they didn't show up or not as much as men. So we had to look for them and actively ask them to come and to be
Mm.
more, because men would be more open to it, or yeah.
Yeah, and get
Mm.
when I do a lot of kind of kind of cross-departmental, cross-functional kind of facilitation as well. And people will say, "Oh, how do we get like I don't know, more customers or like more like people from a particular community involved?" It's like, well, first thing you need to do is go and like hang out in the places where those people hang out.
Yeah.
And that's your best route in. It's like find where people already hang out and share the message in those spaces. Like don't expect everyone to come to you,
Hmm.
because people are busy, right? And
Yeah.
why should they?
You have to meet there where they are.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah. Just to go back to the practical side of things. So right
Mm,
now, your sessions, there are 2 sessions a week of 2 hours. That's right?
correct. Yeah,
Yeah, of
correct.
25 minutes and 5 minutes break, etc.
Yeah.
Are you thinking in the future to do something differently, or do you want to keep like that, or do you want to experiment with a few different
Mm.
things? Yeah.
Yeah, so the kind of plans for the future are I would when we kind of as we kind of grow the membership, I'd really like to, I guess, train some people up to be able to hold the space in a similar way. And again, it'll be about getting a good balance between allowing people to bring their own personality, perhaps the music that they bring to the session, perhaps maybe some of the kind of resets that we do in those 5 minute breaks, give people some
Hmm.
space for that. But kind of having some kind of structure that makes it clear that like, oh yeah, I'm clearly in one of these space to thrive, focus sessions.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'd love to kind of get the membership up a bit more. I'd love to have people from all over the world,
Hmm.
so that we can also start to host more sessions at more times.
Yeah, you'll
Um,
have to dispatch because
right, yeah.
Asia isn't Europe, isn't Americas.
For
Mm.
sure, right? So, yeah, that would be really cool. So if there are people watching and thinking, "Oh, this sounds kind of interesting. I'd like to get involved." Like, it's not just about potentially doing your own work. I mean, I tend to get on with my own work as well, right? Whilst running the
Hmm.
sessions, but yeah, it'd be nice to very similar to the boat idea. How
Yes.
that is now run as a cooperative. I'd like to run these sessions as a cooperative. Train people how to do it, and then
Hmm.
make sure people are kind of paid for their time to run the sessions. So yeah, something will start to emerge.
Yeah.
I'm sure over
Everybody
time,
brings their own ideas, like a big pot. Each
for
puts their
sure.
ingredients, and then you see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And we might end up with a Italian style, like a pizza. We'll end up with a curry. We'll end up with
Mediterranean.
Yeah,
Mm.
exactly. And it's like, well, the you're still going to get fed no matter which session you come to. There'll just be a different flavor for each of
Yeah,
those
I get.
sessions.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
nice. Yeah, yeah. So those are the plans.
Mm.
Yeah, it's really just about kind of, I guess, finding people
Yes.
where that people are interested in this. So I think it really appeals to people who don't live actually in very urban areas. This seems to really appeal to people who live rurally,
Yeah.
um,
In
and who
remote areas doing remote
right.
work.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm.
exactly. Super remote because otherwise it's like you're not going to travel 2 hours to your nearest city to, go to a co-working session
No.
necessarily, because
Mm.
then you've kind of used up lots of your day traveling. So I think this really appeals to people who work from home a lot of the time remotely. They might live in a remote area, or they might live in a community, but maybe there isn't a central space where they could go for a co-working session, or there aren't enough people that would sustain a co-working session locally. So I think that's one of the things that is kind of particularly interesting about our group. Um, yeah, everyone's just really spread out from all over the place.
Hmm. Hmm.
Mm,
Well, I see we're coming to the end. We have a few comments that maybe will show. But before
yeah,
that, is there anything you'd like to add about what we've been talking about?
I guess it would just be this idea of trying to detach from our work a little bit, and be
Mm.
be a little bit more observational about how we work rather than being too attached to
Hmm.
you know
So
the end
not
outcome.
necessarily switching off, but maybe take a step back.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Mm.
interesting how much I managed to get done in those 2 hours, as
Yeah.
opposed to, oh, I should have got more done. You know,
Mm.
that's
Yeah, the
interesting.
difference in mindset
Mm,
is sometimes everything.
for sure. And really getting used to, I love bringing people into their body during these sessions as well, so kind of
Ooh.
making sure we're sat properly, we're kind of
Well,
looking at
wait,
our
wait, wait.
shoulders, right? Yeah, right. Imagining that we've got a like a little plumb like line pulling
Like
from our
this.
head towards the ceiling, and that our hips are very slightly tilted forwards. That we're kind of conscious of those aches and pains that we might get up and
Oh,
move
yeah.
around, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and if we're in a chair, or we're not able to stand, again, it's about adjusting ourselves and making sure that we're conscious of our bodies,
Hmm.
because 2 hours is a long time for anyone to be sat still, you know. So keep the movement going. And it's also
Yes.
super interesting, like when you start to twist, for example, you stimulate the intestines, which is where we produce about
No way.
95% of our serotonin. So actually, just by doing a little bit
Mm.
of swinging our arms, which is what we'll often do in the break, serotonin
Yes.
twist, and all of a sudden you just
Very
you just feel
interesting.
so happy. And people
Just
are like,
because you moved.
right, I know, right? And people are
I
like, I
know.
can't believe how good I feel working. It's like,
Well,
this is what it
next
could be
time I take
like.
a break, I'm gonna do this. That's for sure.
Serotonin twist.
Certainly
Nice.
twist. Well, today on the show, I just wanted, before we end this,
Mm.
to show Asma is saying hello, and then there's
Hi, Asma.
hey, and then there's Mike, who has also a co-working, and they have a media niche. So that's what I love about co-working spaces, is that they all have their own something special. Yeah, that's the name of the show. They only tell awesomeness. They only tell flavor. You were talking about the different co-working
Mm.
session. All have their own flavor. Each space has two.
Mm.
That's what's fantastic about them, I believe. Yeah.
Nice, nice. Well,
Well,
thank you
to
so much
end
for having
this,
me.
just one thing. If people
Mm.
want to contact you or get more information about the Space to Thrive,
Yep.
where can they get that?
So they could follow me on LinkedIn,
Mm-hmm.
look for my name, Ed Moss,
It
or
must.
also the Space to Thrive on LinkedIn,
Mm-hmm.
or visit my website, thespacetothrive.com. And if you go into the kind of all programs and look for virtual co-working, you'll find the link there. Maybe we can share the link afterwards as well.
Yeah, I'll share the
Um,
link to your profile, the website, and the programs.
Amazing.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Ed. It was so lovely. I can't believe it was super
I
fast.
know. It was
When we
really
were
quick.
talking, we were chatting, and then suddenly I had to end it. Oh, luckily, I have an alarm. I don't know if you heard it, because otherwise, we're lost. We're lost.
For sure. I always have to have my watch or something on screen, countdown timer.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was using my Pomodoro alarm, so I know 25 minutes past. I need to finish to be at 30.
Nice, nice.
Hmm. Well, thank
Well,
you
it's
very
been
much.
great. Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
and I add all the information in the comments. If anybody has any questions, I'm sure you'll be there, and we'll catch up again soon.
Yeah, for sure. And have a great rest of the summer. Enjoy,
Yeah.
everybody.